2 months had passed, and I was still sitting in a prison cell for a crime I didn't even commit. Was I completely insane for waiving my rights for a trial by my peers? I accepted free counsel instead of using the funds my late parents left for us. Man, I don't know what I was thinking. I never thought that things would end up the way it did. I'll begin with the night my parents were killed in a car accident. That was the very night my life changed forever. I was 17 years old. I was up late studying for my history final and waiting for my parents to return home from one of their weekly date nights. They had been married for 20 years and were still so in love. My younger sister Jada was already asleep. I guess she had finished studying for her finals. I realized it was past 1 a.m., which was a lot later than my parents would usually return home. I'll never forget that knock on the door. I knew it wasn't my parents. I mean, why would they be knocking on the door of the home they owned? I was instantly hesitant. The knock sounded different than any other knock I had heard before. Somehow I knew that it would be the knock that changed everything. When I opened the front door, I received the news that my parents were killed by a drunk driver. I immediately went into a state of shock. I remember the flashing lights and looking around at all the nosy neighbors that had come outside. I saw the officer's mouth moving, but after his devastating report, everything else was a blur. I could not bring myself to absorb or comprehend another word. I guess I was entirely in disbelief. I do remember the officer asking were there any relatives or a family friend I could call to stay with me and my sister. I responded with, yes, we'll be okay. I'll call my aunt. It'll be okay. I think I was trying to convince myself more than the officer. The officer handed me a card. I vaguely remember what it was for. I shut the door after taking the card from the officer. I was supposed to call someone or be someplace in the morning. I guess it would come back to me by then. The next morning, my sister and I were up bright and early at the medical examiner's office, identifying the bodies of our parents. Jada completely fell apart. The whole process was emotionally draining. My Aunt Stacy did step in as much as she could. I didn't expect her to do as much as she did. She was a single mother raising 3 kids of her own, a 5-year-old daughter and a set of twin boys. They were all under the age of 10 years old. I decided to step up at that point. I had to become the man my sister and I needed to stay together. Besides, I was in my last semester of high school and only a few weeks away from my 18th birthday. Fortunately, my parents had a lot of things already in place. I guess when you're an adult, you learn to prepare yourself for anything. But how could they have been prepared for something like this? They did set aside a nice amount of money for Jada and I for school and life expenses just in case. Being the oldest, I was awarded a monthly stipend effective immediately after they passed for monthly household expenses and to take care of my sister and I daily. We could not gain full access to our individual inheritance until we reached 21 years old or were enrolled in some type of higher learning. Of course, I was only a few weeks away from my high school graduation, and I planned on enrolling in the local community college to complete my basics and then transfer to the university. Jada was a sophomore and just recently turned 16 last month. Our house was already paid for and was going to transfer into my name in a few weeks after I turned 18. So I went into protective mode for my younger sister. I made sure she ate, went to school, and did what she was supposed to, all while maintaining my 3.5 GPA. As the days after our parents' funeral turned into weeks, then months, the dynamic between Jada and me began to change. I didn't know what else to do. The more I tried to give her the stability and structure I figured all teenage girls needed. She seemed to resent me more, and our once playful big brother baby sister relationship began to diminish. I started to see the absence of our parents take a real toll on Jada, and she started to act out because of it. By the time I graduated from high school, I decided to take my basic college course online at the local community college. I went to work full time and managed to take care of my sister. I figured by the time I was done with my basics, my sister would be done with high school herself. However, while I was juggling work and school, my sister started her junior year of high school on academic probation and 3 months pregnant. We both knew that mom and dad would have been beyond disappointed with her. She started to spiral. I think it was partly their death and partly her shame. She seemed to hate me, even though it was hard for both of us. I guess I was thriving a bit more. It's not that I didn't feel the impact of my parents being gone, but I guess I just processed it differently. Or maybe I realized I couldn't bring them back, so I just pushed it aside and focused on what I could do and tried to be the best I could be. I knew they were still watching over us from heaven, and I wanted to make them proud. Jada started to see me more as a parental figure and less like her older brother, which you would think would be a good thing, but it wasn't. It damaged our sibling bond in more ways than one. I remember her screaming those famous lines at me more than a few times. "You're not my father," every time I found myself checking her behind hanging out with some nothing guy, coming home late or too hungover to get up for school the next day. I wasn't her father, and I was nothing like my dad. I guess the real story began the day Jada came into my room late one night, and the disgust that was usually written across her face when she looked at me wasn't there. It was an emotion that was new yet familiar. Something had happened, and Jada needed her big brother. I got up quickly from the homework I was working on and said, "What's up, Jada? Are you okay? This better not be about one of those knucklehead punks. Did they touch you?" She started crying, and she ran into my arms, and I could tell it was deeper than just another fight with one of her useless guys of the month. We sat in silence for what seemed like forever. I hadn't held my sister like this since the day we buried our parents. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Aunt, I'm pregnant." I can't say I was surprised. With all her late night coming home and hanging out with random dudes, I didn't want to judge her by asking if she knew who the father was. All that would come out soon enough. For now, I just wanted to be her big brother and show her love and support. So I just hugged her and told her not to worry about anything. We were going to get through this together, and I assured her that her baby would be one loved little boy or girl.